If you didn't hear, a few days before the most recent Pokemon Presents, a new leak dropped, and it turned out to be real. And that leaker is back with more information. We've got so much to talk about. Let's dive in. All right, so if you've been sleeping under a crustal, you know that this leaker came out a couple days before the Presents and said, hey, we're gonna get Paradox Suicune and Virizion, Water Dragon, Grass Psychic. The DLC is called Hidden Treasure of Area 0. They talked about the new clothing for version 1.2. They talked about a mystery Pokemon with a green mask, the third legendary becoming a large blue turtle, and then ultimately saying that they're working on a graphics enhancement patch for the new Nintendo Switch models that are going to be released alongside DLC 2. Well, they followed it up with more information, so we have a new insider, and it makes me wonder if it's actually Riddler Coup in disguise, but nonetheless, it's probably someone different. But they said, I'm the poster of this post. Here's my identification so you know it's me. I'm not going to leak any more information, but I wanted to add some clarification to the previous one. The hexagon is not the third DLC title, but an element that is displayed many times in the DLC. So they're saying, hey, listen, hexagon is a very big theme. Hidden Treasures of Area 0 is the dealio, but we know hexagons are very heavily tied to Zygarde, so I think there's still a connection there, or potentially a connection there. They then go on to say that the special terrestrial appearance I mentioned is a new game mechanic that was not announced in the Pokemon Presents, I guess. Some Pokemon will acquire new terrestrial forms. This is massive. We have theorized this from day one. They did it in Pokemon Sword and Shield, but I thought great effectiveness actually, but we haven't seen it in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and it seems as though it's coming in the DLC. And what that is the idea that specific Pokemon get special Terra forms. And again, very surprised this wasn't the case. They did it with Megas. You know, you had certain Pokemon that could Mega Evolve. They did it with Gigantamaxing. Every Pokemon could Dynamax, some Pokemon could Gigantamax, and they would gain extra benefits or changes to them based on that Gigantamax. And I really like that because it made it so they had their Gmax moves, but it didn't make a huge difference stat-wise, right? Like, they didn't change stats or anything. But for some Gigantamaxes like Charizard, it made a huge difference because Gmax Wildfire was actually insane. So the idea that we could have Pokemon that could have special terrestrial forms is very, very interesting. Now, what does that potentially entail? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is terrestrial forms with more than one type, right? So not only can you terrestrialize into, let's say, a fire type, but maybe if you're Skeledirge, you can actually terrestrialize into a special terrestrial form that's both fire and ghost type. So you actually keep your typing, and now you get stab double on both attacks. I don't know if that's a good example, but I think that there's definitely some explored areas with that. Or perhaps there's terrestrial forms that are, instead of double a stab, maybe it's 3 times a stab attack. And by stab, I mean same type attack bonus. So I think that there's a lot of place to explore there. And I think that also opens the world up for these terrestrial hats to be unique based on the Pokemon, which I'm personally very excited about. I think this is probably one of the most exciting leaked pieces of information that I've seen in a long time. Like, I really hope this is the deal. And it seems as though it's coming from a source that has inside information. So that's pretty hype. They then go, so anyway, let me know your thoughts on that. I think that's a big deal. They then go on to say that the new Switch model mentioned is, and then they kind of post some different characters. I'm not really sure what that says, if I'm being honest. I have no idea. But basically the translation is the new Switch model is actually a next-gen console, the successor, not a revision. So that's very interesting, saying that there's going to be an entirely new Switch. Like, this isn't Switch OLED, this isn't Switch, like, you know, plus, right? Like, this is apparently the next generation of the Nintendo Switch consoles. Very surprised that we haven't heard of that yet. So I would say that this is probably the biggest hangout, but at the same time, if you've been following the cookie crumbs for the last couple years, man, there's been a lot of things that have pointed towards a new Nintendo Switch. We thought it was coming a couple years ago. They dropped the OLED. That was potentially heavily based on chip shortages that were going on globally. There's a lot of factors here, but nonetheless, it seems as though this is something to be keeping an eye out for. They also go on to say, as far as I know, DLC 2 is scheduled to be released in early 2024, which actually counters what we heard from the Presents. They said the Presents were going to be, or the DLC was going to be fall 2023 and winter 2023, but this person is saying, hey, it's actually going to be early 2024. So I'm wondering if that's, like, I don't know, that's very weird to me. Like, they just said it was going to be in winter, so this person's saying it's going to be early next year, which would be like January, right? Which is still winter, but why would they say 2023? I don't know. Just something to kind of keep in mind or be open-minded to as we kind of develop this out. But they say other contents have already been announced. Sorry for the unclearness before. Nah, you're good. Thanks for the leaks, bro. So obviously, some pretty big information here. I think the biggest thing for me is the new terrestrial forms. That's something I'm very excited about. We'll have to keep an eye on the themes revolving around the hexagons. And then again, potential new Nintendo Switch. Lots of clarity, good stuff from what seems to be a legitimate leaker. I'm on board the hype train. Let's see where this takes us. From there, a couple interesting posts we saw on the internet. Taco posted this, says, after seeing every Pokemon in Area 0, where was this gorilla Pokemon? And this actually was posted a few weeks back, and it's interesting because there is this like gorilla Pokemon in the sketch, and you see like, you know, some of the different Pokemon, Palmot and then Flamigo, but this is, you know, we never saw anything about this gorilla Pokemon. Some people have said, oh, well, that's slacking, you know, but whatever. I don't know if that is, and slacking's not present in that area, so I don't know. I think this is something to just keep in the back of your mind. If it comes up, you know, it doesn't really look like any other gorilla Pokemon, doesn't really look like a Rangaroo. I don't know. Just keep your eyes out on that one as we kind of get new Paradox forms, new forms in general. This may be one of the biggest pieces of information. If you saw yesterday's video, you know that the squad, the homies on the internet are looking. They're looking at every poster in the game. They're looking for clues. Now that we know that the green mask Pokemon was leaked, or teased rather, in the base game before the announcement, it's on a poster. Well, everyone's looking at posters. We're like, wait a minute, we gotta look at every single poster in the game right now. And Light posts this and says, I probably found the third Koraidon and Miraidon, right? So in every game we've had, you've got your, you know, your three legendaries pretty much, right? Well, more or less, right? You've got your Groudon, Kyogre, your Rayquaza, your, you know, Reshiram and Zekrom, and then Kyurem, right? So, you know, that's a pretty normal kind of concept in the Pokemon space. We have Koraidon, Miraidon, we have Cyclizar, which is kind of some sort of not legendary, just regular Pokemon. There's been a lot of thoughts that there's going to be a present version of this Pokemon that's not Cyclizar called Genzaidon, which follows the naming theme of Koraidon, Miraidon, Genzaidon. I guess it's all tied together with past, future, and present. So this could be it. This really could be it. It's confirmed there's a third academy called the Blueberry Academy. Could this be the Pokemon representing the present, right? Because you've got the grapes, and you've got the oranges, and now we've got the blueberries. This is interesting, and you've got this particular Pokemon that looks very interesting. And it kind of looks like a little bit Corviknight-like, but when you compare it to Cyclizar, there are some differences there. You see some similarities between Koraidon and Miraidon. It's got the indigo-like colors like blueberries. Could simply be a coincidence. Let me know what you guys think. I thought this was a really cool post from Light here, and it's got me excited. This may be the first time we see this kind of third legendary of the trio, at least. Obviously, we know the Turtle's a legendary. Maybe the Turtle's a mythical at this point. Like, we don't really know. I feel like it's a little up in the air. A couple other pieces of information I thought was worth mentioning. Pokesutami reports on the new Kitakami Pokemon. They have this pink-purple incorporated into their design. I guess this is based on something called the Haki Maki. Probably saying that wrong. Their headbands worn at festivals. Munkidora wears it on its head. Pheasantipity wears it. They all have it on them somehow, some way, shape, or form. So that's kind of the inspiration for that. I don't know if I mentioned this in a previous video, but I do feel like this types of inspiration and understanding where this stuff comes from does help me at least appreciate the design a little bit more, right? Because sometimes you don't fully understand the design when you first see it. Last thing to mention today, Soul Silver calls out the fact that the official codename of the DLC is Sudachi, which we already knew, but that's a small green fruit, kind of like a lime, right? It's very similar to a lime. One thing to note is, of course, poster searchers out here, we found what seems to be that. So they go on to say that the teal mask started with the idea of Sudachi as a signature fruit, but they eventually changed it to apples, nailing down the area of Kitakami and specifically green apples to connect back to the color of the DLC. There also seems to be a poster hinting at these fruits. All just food for thought. Good tie in there. So basically saying, you know, they were gonna do this inspiration based on these little Sudachi fruits. They ended up making it around green apples. We saw the imagery about apples. Maybe the first DLC is about the Apple Academy or that kind of general theme of fruits. And then obviously Blueberry Academy being the last thing. We still know that there's gotta be something with apples. Is this the connection? You go from this green little lime-like fruit to green apples. That kind of ties it all together. I don't know. They showed red apples in the trailer, so I'm not exactly sure. But we do have some pieces of the puzzle. It's just how do they all fit together, really. So that's that for today's updates, man. I tell you what, these special terrestrial hats are gonna be fuego, and it's awesome to see all this information coming out. The squad on the internet looking for these posters. Who knows what's gonna be uncovered tomorrow? Make sure you guys stay glued to the channel and subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Check out some of our other content here. I've been covering all of the Pokemon Day stuff, so don't miss out, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace.